Right now, on a training pitch somewhere in Cape Verde, Curaçao, Jordan, or Uzbekistan, a player is preparing for a tournament his country has never played in. Not in 1930, not in 1994, not in 2022. Never! In a few weeks, that changes forever. This summer, 48 nations will stand on the same stage for the first time in history. Not 32, 48. 3 countries will host it, 16 cities will hold it, 39 days will decide it. No World Cup has ever looked like this. And somewhere underneath all those numbers, something strange is happening. The same 6-kilogram gold trophy that's been chased since 1930 is now being chased by nations that didn't exist on this stage a single year ago.
Meanwhile, the team that lifted it last time is trying to do something almost nobody in football history has managed. So here's the real question nobody's asking yet. Is this the biggest World Cup ever built, or the most fragile one? Let's find out. Hey, I'm Leo, and this is FootyLeo, the channel where we dig into the parts of football the scoreboard never shows you, the stories underneath the stories. If that sounds like your kind of thing, stick around, because this one gets strange fast. Let's start with the number that breaks the pattern, 32. For 24 years, from 1998 all the way to 2022, that number never moved. 32 teams every 4 years like clockwork. It became the shape football fans expected the World Cup to take. You knew the rhythm. Group stage, round of 16, quarterfinals, semis, final. Clean, predictable, almost comfortable. Now throw that rhythm away. 48 teams, 12 groups of 4. Every team still plays 3 group games. But here's where it gets interesting. The top 2 from each group go through automatically. That's 24 teams. But then FIFA added something that has never existed in World Cup history before. The 8 best third-place finishers also advance. Suddenly you have a brand new round. The round of 32. A round that didn't exist for your entire life until this tournament. Think about what that actually means. In the old format, finishing third was the end. Pack your bags, go home, see you in 4 years. Now, finishing third might just be the beginning of your story. One more match, one more shot at history. One more chance to be eliminated, sure, but also one more chance to become the team nobody saw coming. That's not a small tweak. That's FIFA rewriting the odds for over a dozen nations who in any previous era would already be watching from their couches. And the scale doesn't stop at the bracket. This tournament spans 3 countries: the United States, Canada, Mexico, 16 host cities spread across a continent: New York, Los Angeles, Toronto, Mexico City, Atlanta, Vancouver, Guadalajara, cities that in some cases sit a 6-hour flight apart from each other. No World Cup has ever asked players, fans, and broadcasters to cover this much ground in this little time. Here's a detail that gets buried under all the bigger numbers, but it might be the one that says the most. The opening match kicks off at Estadio Azteca in Mexico City. That stadium already opened a World Cup in 1970. It opened another one in 1986. In a few weeks, it becomes the only stadium on Earth to open 3 different World Cups. Not host 3 tournaments, open 3. Be the very first match the entire planet watches 3 separate times across 3 separate generations. And there's something almost poetic about that. A building that's seen the tournament grow from black and white broadcasts to 4-dimensional global spectacle, still standing there, still the place where it all begins. So you've got a bigger bracket, a brand new safety net with a hole in it, and a stadium carrying 6 decades of history into one more opening kickoff. But none of that explains why this tournament actually matters. Numbers don't make people cry in front of a television. People do that. And that's where this story gets personal. 4 nations have qualified for a World Cup for the very first time in their history. Not their first time in years, their first time ever. Cape Verde, Curaçao, Jordan, Uzbekistan. Say those names slowly. None of them belong to football royalty. None of them have a trophy cabinet, a golden generation people still talk about, or a stadium chant that's been passed down for 50 years. What they have is a single qualifying campaign that changed everything. Take Cape Verde, an island nation off the coast of West Africa with a population smaller than a mid-sized American city.
For decades, football there existed the way it does in thousands of small nations, passionately, locally, almost invisibly to the rest of the world. Then one qualifying run later, players who grew up kicking a ball on volcanic sand are about to walk out under stadium lights in front of a global audience measured in the billions. Curaçao is even smaller, roughly 150,000 people. To put that in perspective, that's not a country-sized population. That's a neighborhood in some cities. And yet, for the next few weeks, 150,000 people get to say their flag is on the same stage as Brazil's, as Argentina's, as France's.
Jordan brings something different. A nation from the Middle East stepping onto a tournament hosted across North America, carrying an entire region's hopes in a way that doesn't need translation. And Uzbekistan from Central Asia brings a footballing culture most of the world has simply never had the chance to see up close. Not because it isn't there, because nobody was watching. Here's the thing about World Cup debuts. They don't usually end quietly. In 1950, the United States, a team nobody outside the country even considered a footballing nation, beat England. Not a draw, a win. One of the biggest shocks the sport has ever recorded, delivered by a team making their World Cup debut. In 2002, Senegal walked into their very first match at a World Cup and beat the defending champions, France, their first match ever. And in 2018, Iceland, a country with roughly the population of a single NFL stadium, held Argentina to a draw in their opening game and turned into a story the entire football world couldn't stop talking about. So when people say a debut nation is just happy to be there, remember that. Sometimes the team with nothing to lose is exactly the team that makes you lose everything you assumed. Nobody knows yet what Cape Verde, Curaçao, Jordan, or Uzbekistan will do once the whistle blows. Maybe they go home after 3 matches with nothing but pride. Maybe one of them writes the next chapter in that same list of impossible upsets. But here's what's strange. While 4 nations are stepping onto this stage for the very first time in their existence, one team is stepping back onto it, trying to do something that's only been managed twice in the entire history of the tournament. Argentina arrives in 2026 carrying something heavier than a trophy. They're carrying an expectation that history says they probably won't meet. Let's go back to December 2022 for a second, because you need this moment to understand what's coming. Argentina and France played what a lot of people still call the greatest final in World Cup history. 3 goals each after 90 minutes, 3 goals each after extra time. It came down to penalties. Argentina won. And at the center of it all was a 35-year-old man who had already won everything else the sport could offer him, except this one thing. Lionel Messi finally lifted the World Cup in his 5th and final attempt. It was the perfect ending, except football doesn't really do endings. It just moves on to the next question. And the next question is brutal. Can Argentina do it again? Here's why that question should make you nervous if you're an Argentina fan. Since 1930, only 2 nations have ever successfully defended a World Cup title. Brazil did it in 1958 and 1962, built around a teenager named Pelé who turned into the tournament's defining figure almost overnight. Italy did it in 1934 and 1938 under a coach named Vittorio Pozzo, whose tactical discipline was so far ahead of its time that opponents simply couldn't solve it. That's it. 2 nations out of every World Cup ever played. And the last successful defense happened over 60 years ago. Everyone else who's tried since then has failed. France won in 2018, walked into 2022 as defending champions, and lost that legendary final to Argentina on penalties. Italy won in 2006, came back in 2010, and didn't even survive the group stage. Germany won in 2014, considered one of the most dominant squads in modern football, returned in 2018, and were eliminated in the group stage too. The trophy, it turns out, doesn't like being kept. Nobody fully agrees on why it's this hard. Some people point to the physical toll. Every tournament ages a squad, and 4 years is a long time for a team built around peak performers. Some point to the target on your back, the way every opponent treats the match against the champion as their World Cup final, regardless of the round. And some just call it what it looks like from the outside. a pattern too consistent to be coincidence. So as Argentina walks into this tournament, every match carries two storylines at once. Win, and they join a list with only two names on it in over 90 years. Lose, and they join a list that's far, far longer. It's a strange thing to think about. The team trying to repeat something almost nobody manages, sharing a stage with four teams just trying to exist on it for the first time. Different goals, same trophy. And that trophy itself has a story most people watching have never actually heard. Every nation in this tournament, Argentina chasing history, Cape Verde making it, is chasing the exact same object. So let's actually look at it. The World Cup trophy stands 36 centimeters tall. It weighs 6 kilograms. It's made of 18-karat gold, sitting on a base built from 2 layers of malachite, a green stone that almost looks like it's still alive under the right light. The design shows 2 human figures, arms raised, holding up the entire planet. Not a ball, not a crown, the Earth itself. An Italian sculptor named Silvio Gazzaniga designed it in 1971 after FIFA needed a replacement for the original trophy, which had simply been won outright by Brazil after their 3rd title. Gazzaniga's version has been handed out at every World Cup since 1974. More than 50 years of champions, all photographed holding the exact same piece of gold. Here's something most fans don't realize, though. The trophy the winning captain lifts on the pitch isn't the one that goes home with them. The real trophy stays with FIFA. What teams actually keep is a gold-plated replica. The original is too valuable, too singular, too much a piece of football history to let it disappear into one country's trophy case for 4 years. Engraved on the base are the nations who've actually won it. Right now there are 8 names on that trophy. Brazil leads with 5 titles. Germany and Italy each have 4. Argentina has 3. France and Uruguay have 2 apiece. England and Spain have 1 each. 8 names. In an entire sport played by over 200 countries, only 8 have ever gotten their name onto that base. In 2026, one of 2 things happens. Either one of those 8 adds another title to their column, or a 9th name gets engraved onto that trophy for the very first time in its existence. Both outcomes change football history. There is no neutral result here. Somebody's name either grows, or the list itself grows. And maybe that's the part that makes this object so strange to think about. It's just metal and stone. 6 kilograms already. You could probably carry it home in a duffel bag. But it represents something no amount of gold can actually measure. The answer to a single question that 211 football federations spent 4 straight years trying to answer. Who's the best on the planet? Right now. This cycle. This moment.
And to even get the chance to answer that question, you first have to survive a process most fans never think about. Getting to the World Cup is its own tournament, fought in qualifying matches most of the world never watches, across confederations that don't even play by the same rules. For some nations, that process takes more than 20 matches, spread across years, just to earn 90 minutes on this stage. For others, the path is shorter, but no less brutal. Either way, by the time a team actually steps onto the pitch in 2026, they've already survived something most viewers at home will never see. Here's where the numbers actually start to mean something. For decades, qualification worked roughly the same way. A handful of guaranteed spots for Europe and South America, a tight squeeze for everyone else, and brutal odds for the rest of the planet. Africa, with over 50 football-playing nations, used to get just 5 spots at the entire World Cup. 5 for an entire continent. In 2026, that number jumps to 9. Asia goes from roughly 4 or 5 spots to 8. Europe still gets the largest share at 16, South America holds at 6, North and Central America and the Caribbean get 6, on top of 3 automatic spots for the United States, Canada, and Mexico, since they're hosting. Add it up and you start to see what this expansion actually is. It isn't just a bigger bracket, it's a redistribution of opportunity across the entire sport.
Nations that spent generations watching the World Cup from the outside now have a real mathematical path in. That's not a marketing decision. That's structural change at the level of who gets to dream in the first place. But here's the catch nobody likes to talk about when they're celebrating the bigger numbers. Bigger doesn't automatically mean better. It also means harder to run. Think about the physical reality of this tournament for a second. Matches are being played in cities a 6-hour flight apart, across 3 time zones in 3 different countries with 3 different climates. Some of these venues sit in serious summer heat, hot enough that organizers built in 3-minute hydration breaks during matches just to protect players from the conditions. That's not a tactical pause. That's player safety written directly into the rulebook because the geography demanded it.
Broadcasters now have to cover a tournament that doesn't sleep. When it's primetime in New York, it might be the middle of the afternoon in Vancouver and early evening in Mexico City. 104 matches need to be scheduled, broadcast, and officiated across a logistical map that no previous World Cup organizer ever had to draw. So, go back to the question we started with. Is this the biggest World Cup ever built, or the most fragile one? Maybe it's both. Maybe the same expansion that gives Cape Verde, Curaçao, Jordan, and Uzbekistan a stage they've never stood on is the exact same expansion that pushes the entire operation to the edge of what's actually manageable. More countries, more cities, more heat, more travel, more matches, more chances for something to go wrong, and more chances for something nobody's ever seen before to happen instead. That tension between historic opportunity and operational chaos might be the real story of this entire tournament. Not who wins, whether the format itself survives its own ambition.
If you've stuck with me this far into the video, that tells me something. You're not just watching highlights. You actually want to understand this sport, not just react to it. So if that's you, do me a favor and subscribe to FootyLeo. We put out stories like this one every single day, and honestly, this channel grows because people like you decide to stick around for the next one. Here's a question for you before we keep going. Out of everyone we've talked about so far, Argentina chasing history, or Cape Verde, Curaçao, Jordan, and Uzbekistan chasing their first taste of it, who are you actually rooting for? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one, and I'll reply to as many as I can. All right, back to it. Because there's one more piece of this puzzle, and it's the part that ties everything else together. All of this, the bigger bracket, the new round, the debutant nations, the curse hanging over the defending champion, the trophy itself, none of it gets tested in theory. It gets tested in real time, starting the moment the first whistle blows at the Estadio Azteca. Think about what that opening match actually represents. A stadium that's already opened 2 World Cups is about to open a 3rd, in a tournament that's bigger, stranger, and more unpredictable than anything that's come before it. Every team walking out for their first match is stepping into a format that's never actually been tested at this scale. Not in a simulation, not in a preview, for real, with real stakes for the first time. And somewhere in that opening week, you're going to get your first real data point. Does a debutant nation hold their own against a football giant the way Senegal did, the way Iceland did, the way the United States did decades before either of them? Does the extra round of 32 actually save a team that would have gone home in any previous tournament? Does the heat, the travel, the sheer geographic size of this thing start cracking teams that looked unbeatable on paper? You won't know any of that from a preview video. You'll know it from watching it actually happen. That's the strange thing about a tournament built this big. It's not just a competition anymore. It's an experiment. FIFA built something that's never existed before and is about to find out in real time, in front of billions of people, whether it actually works. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, one team is going to lift that 6-kilogram trophy on July 19th inside MetLife Stadium in New Jersey in front of more than 80,000 people and a global audience that dwarfs that number 1,000 times over. Maybe it's a nation defending something almost nobody manages to defend. Maybe it's a name nobody expected, written onto that base for the very first time. Whatever happens, by the time the final whistle blows on that night, the World Cup will look different from how it's looked for the last 96 years. Not slightly different, permanently different. Go back to where we started. A player, somewhere in Cape Verde, somewhere in Curaçao, somewhere in Jordan, somewhere in Uzbekistan, training for something his country has never done before. That image hasn't changed since the beginning of this video. He's still out there, right now. Stay getting ready for a stage that didn't exist for his nation a year ago.
That's the strange thing about a tournament built this big. It's not just a competition anymore, it's an experiment. FIFA built something that's never existed before and is about to find out in real time, in front of billions of people, whether it actually works. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, one team is going to lift that 6-kilogram trophy on July 19th inside MetLife Stadium in New Jersey in front of more than 80,000 people and a global audience that dwarfs that number 1,000 times over. Maybe it's a nation defending something almost nobody manages to defend. Maybe it's a name nobody expected, written onto that base for the very first time. Whatever happens, by the time the final whistle blows on that night, the World Cup will look different from how it's looked for the last 96 years. Not slightly different, permanently different. Go back to where we started. A player, somewhere in Cape Verde, somewhere in Curaçao, somewhere in Jordan, somewhere in Uzbekistan, training for something his country has never done before. That image hasn't changed since the beginning of this video. He's still out there, right now. Still getting ready for a stage that didn't exist for his nation a year ago. What's changed is you. You now know what he's actually walking into. A tournament that doubled in size almost overnight. A new round that didn't exist for your entire life until this summer. A stadium in Mexico City about to do something no stadium on earth has ever done. Open a third World Cup. Decades apart, generations apart, still standing in the same spot. A defending champion carrying the weight of a record that's only been matched twice since 1930, knowing that history is not on his side. And a 6-kilogram piece of gold and stone that 211 nations spent 4 years trying to touch, even though only 8 of them ever have. None of these stories belong to each other. Argentina's pursuit of history has nothing to do with Cape Verde's first appearance on this stage. The heat in a Texas stadium has nothing to do with a sculptor in Italy carving 2 human figures holding up the earth in 1971. And yet, for 39 days this summer, all of it happens on the same grass, under the same lights, chasing the exact same object.
That's the part worth sitting with. Not the bracket, not the format, not even the football, really. It's the fact that biggest and fragile were never opposites to begin with. They were always the same thing, looked at from 2 different angles. Maybe that's true of most things that matter. The bigger something gets, the more it can hold, and the more it has to risk holding it. A tournament this size can carry more stories than any World Cup before it. A debut from a nation of 150,000 people. A record nobody's touched in 60 years. A stadium getting its third opening night in a sport that didn't even exist in its modern form when it got its first. But carrying that much means there's that much more that could come apart. Somewhere between June 11th and July 19th, you're going to watch history happen. You just don't know yet whose history it's going to be. If this kept you here until the end, do 3 things for me. Subscribe to FootyLeo so you don't miss what comes next. Send this to 3 people who actually love this sport. The kind of people who want to know the Aztec is about to do something no stadium has ever done. And leave a comment, an honest one, not just great video. Tell me what surprised you most, or what you think happens when the whistle blows. And while you're down there, tell me what story you want next, because somewhere in this tournament, there's another one waiting. We just haven't told it yet.